Victoria Lee Scott, the president of the new media platform called the Newscaster Studio, joins me right now. The Newscaster Studio was founded by Clint Day. Clint Day is the son of the individual who founded the Days Inn hotels, and that was Cecil B. Day. Victoria reports directly to Clint Day. Again, she's the president of Newscaster Studio. Let's welcome Victoria. Victoria, nice to see you.
It is an absolute pleasure. We've been waiting a long time to do this, all the talking you and I have done. So it's great to be here. And it's great to put a spotlight on, for years I've been sitting at my desk, banging on my desk, saying, we are who the mainstream media fears. And little did I know when I started on this adventure that mainstream media would take and fall the way it has. I mean, it has become biased and it has changed. And it's just been an incredible journey to have built a platform, the Newscaster Studio, because we are a national podcasting platform. And we serve as a prominent hub for both local and national journalists. So we try to encompass professional, citizen journalists alike, which now we can see. Look at one kid in a sweatshirt and a cell phone exposed. Nick Shirley. I mean, what he has exposed. So it's time that the media itself, such as what you and I are doing, is what is called for to get, to give people a platform that their voice can be heard. Not that, when would people get on Fox or CNN? It's the same people, the same retreads, the same voice. With podcasting, I've been doing this since before the word podcasting. It was internet radio. And I knew that our platform provides a powerful voice for many whose perspectives deserve a nationwide audience. And that's what we bring. And we are different because we are a social media podcasting network. And through strategic promotion on social media platforms and collaboration with other news services, we ensure that our contributors' voices echo throughout this country. And that's what was needed when I started quite a few years ago building this. I had people say to me over and over, are you still doing that radio thing? And that was before podcasting. Yeah, I'm still doing that radio thing. And today I'm the president of that radio thing. So it's what is needed right now as we're watching citizen journalists across this country starting to peel back the onion as far as what's really been going on and what our media has failed to inform the general public on things that really need that need attention. And I think that what we're witnessing in Minnesota has a lot to do with one side just filling people with their viewpoints. And that's why the Newscaster Studio, I call it reuniting American voices.
Wow, very informative. I appreciate your response there, Victoria. As you say, you started this project years ago, and then Clint Day, the son of the founder of Days Inn Hotel, an iconic American name, he got involved. And obviously that really picked things up.
Well, that was interesting because Clint was actually a guest on my show. Somebody had said, call Mr. Day, he's got his own little thing that he was doing at the time. And Clint was a guest on my show. And then the company that I had built for 15 years, a network that I had built, I knew that it was starting to get outdated as I started to watch mainstream media start taking to internet radio and podcasting. So what I did is I did a proposal. I brought in the original investor. I brought in Clint Day as an investor, and the guy that I was working under, I was his vice president at the time. And I did this whole proposal. Well, at the end of the proposal, the guy I was under literally said to me, you're trying to take my company. I don't like the direction you're going. And I very graciously thanked the investors and everybody for joining the meeting, and we hung up. Within 2 minutes, Mr. Day called me and he said, Victoria, the money I was going to invest in your company, can you build me a new news company? And I said, yes, sir, I can. And welcome to the Newscaster Studio. So Mr. Day I am, I mean, it was a great honor when we do our board meetings. He's in St. Simon's Island, Georgia. So my vice president and I go to Clint's place, and it's so wonderful to, his mom is still up in her 90s and she lives in Atlanta. So, to see his life and to see everything that's going on there and how he has jumped in to make this company what it is now. It's been a great honor and a blessing to work with such a man.
It's a great
It really
story.
is.
That's a great story, Victoria. And for our viewers out there, I'm humbled and honored that the Newscaster Studio now broadcasts my shows on there, the Yamato Report and on Main Street with Rick Amato. I thank you for that.
Oh, very
Uh,
welcome.
what can viewers expect to get out of the Newscaster Studio when they visit there?
Okay, what they can get is, rather than going through your news channel and trying to get the news, and you get a 2-minute snippet here and there, and you'll get a piece of information here and there. What we're able to do is we're able to give people a platform and to get into discussions, to be able to get to the meat, to the heart of issues, get to some meat, what's out there, what's going on. And it's not just, I guess one of my big pluses is I have a lot of authors who have been writing books for many years as far as what has been happening in this country, from Vietnam vets to all kinds. I mean, I'm talking about mayors and city officials that during the last few administrations were actually tried and convicted and went to jail falsely. I have had them on my show. And now to give them a platform with their books to explain their stories from these small towns all across this country, that's what the real benefit is. And I talk to a lot of people that normally wouldn't get any press whatsoever, are able to come on. I have a woman who has a border gate, and she's out of Kentucky. And the things that have been going on in the, just in the mayor rate, just in the local communities has been incredible, and they're not getting any eyes on. So the Newscaster Studio is able to go in depth. And my goal is to have platforms where, my biggest goal, what I'm searching for now, truthfully, is I would like to have somebody to lead up a studio called Take Back Our School Boards. Because if we could have a studio, which has always been my dream, if we could have a studio where all PTA teachers and students can talk and become as strong as the teachers union, who has literally corrupted. I have a child that is only 28 years old. I watched when they shoved Common Core down her throat. I watched when it was just ridiculousness for her education. I remember calling when my daughter was in 10th grade, and I called the local high school, and I wanted to know, I said, all right, my child has been in, and we have gone through China in history. And when we come back from spring break, she's off to Iran. Can you let me know, when does my child learn American history? You know what the answer I got, Rick? They get it in 11th grade.
Oh,
now, what grade? You could give it in 9th grade, where you have their scared attention and they can absorb some, or you could give it to them in their senior year when they know they need it to get out. But they give it to them in 11th grade when nothing is absorbed. They're bored, they're tired, they want to be a senior, and that's when they get 1 year of American history. I am floored. And, Charlie Kirk was a great example to me. He's been a friend. We have the same pastor. And Erica, I did Bible study with Erica this past year before Charlie lost his life, one-on-one Bible study. And, when Charlie started doing what he was doing, I said, you know what can I do here? Well, I decided in 2019, when my hair salon was closed down, I decided to my spirit said, go back to college. And I'm like, finish your degree. And I'm like, what? 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 You want me to do what? But I did. I went back to Grand Canyon U, graduated with honors. I have my degree in theology. And I graduated in 2023. But the greatest thing about that was that my daughter, my 26-year-old daughter at the time, watched me walk at commencement. And that just, to lead like that, and, to watch. And now to have young people taking studios so we can start. I actually had a guest on my show. I have his book right here on my desk, 15 years old, and he wrote his book.
Hmm.
Cooper. Yeah. I mean, and it's we started losing not one but two generations to a system that was failing them. And it's good when, what Charlie ignited was good, but we need to give them. We have two generations, Rick, that have been raised with half of America's history. That's why they're out there in the streets, because I have been banging on my desk saying, when we lose the art of debate, we will be left with nothing but violence. And
And
here we are
Victoria,
today.
it's a great point that you make that is not made often enough. Unfortunately, we need to take a quick break. When we come back, you are a former world champion in women's bodybuilding. We're going to hear about that on the other side of this
Yes.
break. I continue with Victoria Lee Scott, the president of the Newscaster Studio. She reports directly to the iconic family name, the Day family, not the family, but the son of the founder of Days Inn Hotel, Clint Day. Victoria, you are a former world champion in women's bodybuilding and something else I had never heard of before. World champion, fashion design, bodybuilding, something like that.
Figure and fitness.
You're in fitness. Wow. Tell us that story because it's a great story.
Well, I was from New York, and
You're
and
kidding.
I was in Manhattan, and I lived a very rough life doing a lot of things that we did back in the 80s, the 80s, Studio 54, Red Parrot. That was my life. I was a bartender, and I lived a very wild life. But in 1989, my world came to a crashing halt. I was doing things I shouldn't have been doing with people and places I didn't belong. And I didn't know how to get out of it. So apparently, my spirit took me to places that gave me no alternative. And as I sat and my wings were clipped and I sat in a very uncomfortable place on a cold jail cell bed, I knew that there was something better for me to do in life. And I knew that this was going to stop, this was going to end. And that day, I turned around and I had three absolute martinis and I said, that's it. And to this day, 36 years later, I've never touched another drink. And I realized at that time, the only way to replace it, when you remove something that controls that much of your life, you just can't white knuckle it. You just can't well, I just won't do it. You've got to replace it with something.
Makes sense.
And what happened with me is I replaced it with starting to train. I actually won my first competition in my own home off of a Bowflex. Do you remember a Bowflex
Yeah.
machine?
Yeah. Wow.
That's what I started training on.
Wow.
And that's when, and I look back now and I have all my pictures up here and I have everything. But you know what all that was, Rick? All of that had nothing to do with the medals and all of that I have today. That was where I learned true discipline. Discipline into my diet, discipline into my training, and not just discipline to bodybuild, but to be disciplined enough. Here I was my whole life afraid of being judged, literally afraid of being judged, as everybody is. My last competition, if you see my pictures, there is everybody in the video keeps saying, why were you laughing? Because as I looked out on my last competition in 2018, I realized that I had spent my whole life afraid to be judged. And here I was at my age in a bikini welcoming people to judge me. And that was it for me. That was when I said, mission accomplished. Now I'll just train because I want to. But the stage is not, there's a different stage for me just doing what I'm doing here. And my job with the Newscaster Studio, again, isn't necessarily for me to be a top-notch podcaster, though I've been doing Victoria's Voice, Grit and Grace, because everything I've done for this company, I have been the prototype. I was the only podcaster. I was the only blogger. I was the only everything when this first started out. So, what it was is the discipline that the bodybuilding taught me was really what carried me through to my life to do today. My job is to get people to do what I do, not to be in the spotlight. I would prefer to just be the president of this company and run it and give people the spotlight. I don't necessarily need that. At one time, the stage was where I want. I was a model. I just picked up my pictures from my portfolio from the 80s. I have them. I found them in my garage this week because I'm emptying out a garage. And I had no idea where my portfolio from Manhattan was. And I just found these pictures. So it's amazing on how many things I set out to do. And that's what I recommend that all young people, if something is inside of you, it doesn't mean that it's going to be forever. But everything leads to another step as to far as what your journey is. And if you sit there and wait for the perfect moment or for the perfect person or for the perfect everything, you're going to waste a lot of time. And time is the only thing we have, and it's extremely valuable. So I am very proud to be the president of this company so that I can give others the time and the place where they should be. And that's what gives me my greatest joy. Not that I have to, I do the podcast because, like I said, I had to, in order to build this, I had to set the example. Now I get to be the guest.
Victoria Lee Scott, president of Newscaster Studio, former world champion in women's bodybuilding. Again, I thank you for broadcasting my shows, The Amato Report and On Main Street with Rick Amato. And I thank you for joining us and sharing all that you have with us.
Well, now I got to go back to my real job. I've owned a hair salon for 30 years. In November, it was 30 years I've owned my own business. And yeah, everything, it's very interesting, with looking back now that all the things that I have done have been solo kind of things. It's like I didn't, and that's why I think I'm so into right now joining and reuniting American voices on the Newscaster Studio, because it's that I've done so much by myself. When you're up there on stage training, it's only you, that's it. There's nobody in the gym pushing those weights but you. So, and even as a hairdresser and being a sole proprietor for 30 years, it's an honor and a blessing to be on your show and to spend this time with you today, and to also be the president of the Newscaster Studio. I thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Victoria. Back with more after this.